From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 38. We've got one of the absolute best dudes in baseball on the show, and I think you're really going to love his charisma and all the great information he brings to the table today. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It's an all-in-one superfood supplement with 75 whole food sourced ingredients to support your body's nutritional needs across 5 critical areas: energy, immunity, gut health, hormonal support, and healthy aging. I'm an avid user of Athletic Greens myself, in spite of the fact that I tend to be a supplement minimalist. To me, this is a product that is much more like whole food nutritional insurance as opposed to a true supplement. The ingredients have been carefully selected at the highest quality, most natural source. You get essential vitamins and minerals, digestive enzymes, prebiotics, probiotics, and that's the zero compromise approach from the company. It's plant-based, sourced from whole foods at the highest quality, so you won't find harmful chemicals, artificial colors or flavors, preservatives, or added sugar. Really, it's perfect for folks who are gluten and dairy-free, paleo, keto, vegan-friendly, great for people who are intermittent fasting, all that fun stuff. Personally, I love it for obviously our athletes who don't get enough nutritional benefits from fruits and vegetables because they don't eat enough. So it's a way to kind of plug in holes in diets. But also, I really like it for our college and professional athletes who may have complex travel schedules where quality food options aren't always at hand. On a personal level, I'm a husband, father of 3, and an entrepreneur. We split our time between 2 states, and I'm also still an avid lifter. So life is inherently crazy, and it can be stressful, and sleep deprivation is definitely something that we encounter. So I rely on Athletic Greens for part of my immune support, and believe firmly that it's made a big difference in keeping me healthy in spite of how crazy our lifestyle is. They've got a great offer in place. If you head to athleticgreens.com/Cressey, they'll get you 20 free travel packets with your purchase. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Cressey, CRESSEY, and you can claim your special offer. Today's guest was a standout shortstop in the Orlando area in high school and was drafted by the Rangers in the 39th round of the 2008 MLB draft. He opted instead to attend Clemson and went on to win the Brooks Wallace Award as the top shortstop in college baseball during his junior year in 2011. That year, he led the ACC in batting average and on-base percentage and was named a first-team All-American and ACC Player of the Year. He was drafted by the Mariners with the 62nd overall pick of the 2011 draft, and shortly thereafter, he made his major league debut in 2013. In the 6 years since, he's also played a number of other positions on the field for the Rays, Brewers, Indians, Yankees, and Phillies organizations. This September, he became the first Phillies player with 3 multi-home run games in a 9-game span in team history. Playing for the Phillies in 2019, he batted .263 with 12 home runs and 21 RBIs in 118 at-bats. Please welcome to the show, Brad Miller. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. I am really excited to have you because you I think, take the cake as like the friendliest guy in all of professional baseball. So this is going to be, at the very least, it's going to be the most cordial episode in the history of this podcast.
Oh wow, I got to work on that. I got to be a little bit more of a jerk at times. So I got tossed. Hey, I got tossed like in the last season of the last week of the season. So right. I mean, that's got to help my street cred a little bit.
I'm happy to hear that you started the offseason on an incredibly negative note relative to your persona. That are in a good place.
Yep.
So folks have heard your bio, but I think it's always intriguing because I know you a little bit physically and as an athlete, but I didn't know you back in the day. So you were drafted out of high school. You were an Orlando guy where basically it seems like every elite hitter in the country for a while came out of. You were drafted out of high school, but you turned it down to attend Clemson. So can you speak a little bit to that decision? How hard was it? Were you a guy that legitimately had an aspiration of playing baseball at that moment if the money had been right? What factors influenced your decision to go to Clemson?
Yeah, I think I think to answer your question, no, I didn't have a real choice, I would say. I definitely was involved, in all the pre-draft circuits and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, I got, a ton of experience just, hitting in front of scouts and being around scouts and, just kind of learning how to handle with like some eyes on you.
Mhm.
But no, it was awesome just to get picked. I think I got picked in like the 39th round by the Rangers, and I was fired up just for that. And even the scout who drafted me told me, he was like, "Hey man, we really wanted to pick you. You're going to have a great time at college, and hopefully, we'll have another chance in 3 years or whatever." So, I definitely was not physically ready, and definitely not mentally either, for professional baseball, but still, pretty exciting just to see your name get called and kind of, take that into college, I guess, a little confidence boost into college.
What do you think the specific competencies were that you were lacking in high school? I mean, like,
Hmm.
you're obviously an athletic shortstop, like you swung out of your shoes, things like that. But what are the
Hmm.
things that you feel like you needed to learn that you wound up, picking up on when you got to college?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was just physicality. I mean, like I just wasn't physically prepared, because I think even out of Clemson at 21, that was the number one thing after I got, a little taste of low A and instructs. I was like, hey, I need to get stronger. So I felt like, luckily growing up in Orlando, hyper competitive on the travel ball circuit and in high school, I felt like I had a little leg up just like experience wise, like getting exposed to some top competition. So maybe my transition at Clemson was a little smoother. But I think, I needed to improve strength, speed, everything really. And, I think over the 3 years at Clemson, it just kind of naturally came. And then, I think dealing with pressure and failure and all that stuff, at the college level definitely prepares you for pro ball.
One of the things I'm curious about was you always hear about guys like SEC and ACC in particular talking
Hmm.
about how sometimes professional baseball is easy compared to what they experience at that level. In fact,
Hmm.
sometimes especially for position players, they feel like the pitching that they face is almost a step back because guys aren't around the zone as much. If you go from playing in
Yeah.
College World Series to going to low A where you might be facing 18 or 19-year-old kids who are throwing 100 to the backstop. Was that an
Hmm.
experience you had, or what do you think?
Yeah, I remember the thing I always heard was, good ACC baseball and SEC baseball is comparable to like high A. Like I'd always heard that, and I don't know who said it but it was just that. And my experience, I felt like there were definitely some players in the ACC and SEC, like the top of those conferences, that immediately could step right into high A and even like double A, like Danny Holtzen from Virginia, like
Yeah.
who was the top pick, or any of those big pitchers could have pitched the next day. We faced Chris Sale. That was fun. And a month later after the season, he's in AAA. Like there were definitely some players that were at that level just seamlessly. But I think just top to bottom, like you get to those high A teams, and that's a whole team that I looked around. It was a lot of our college's best players. So I think definitely the depth wasn't there. But yeah, like on any given day in the ACC or SEC, you could see a player or a position player or a pitcher that, would fit right in with those teams, but definitely not the entire team.
I think people forget how good the 2011 draft was.
Hmm.
I remember I was in Massachusetts at the time, and we had
Hmm.
quite a few prospects there. Tyler Beatty went 21st overall, and there were a
Hmm.
bunch of other names. And I remember them saying it was the best draft since 1986. So
Oh, wow.
that was Garrett Cole, that was Trevor
Oh,
Bauer, that
yeah.
was Lindor, that was
Yeah. Yep.
Baez,
Yep.
Springer. It was incredible. And you look back on it, and I bet 3/4 of the first round is in the big leagues right now when all is said and done.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what made you, so you were drafted in 2011. What made you a big leaguer so quick? Because you were there in 13. It was and you weren't like a September call up. You were up mid season.
Hmm.
What do you think got you to the show in effectively, less than 2 full seasons?
I think, honestly, I was really fortunate that, yeah, obviously we can't really control who takes us, but jumping into the Seattle Mariners, system in 2011, it was a team that wanted to get, all of their young guys if they performed. Like if you showed, hey, like I can dominate this level, they were not scared to push you. So it was a perfect time for, a college performer to get right into the system. And it was a lot of fun. Like, we had a lot of guys that were, you saw your teammates. Hey, he hit 330. Oh, he got called up. So you like saw that, like you saw them moving guys aggressively. And that's kind of what happened. Like, I felt like, my first full season, I was in high A and then got moved up to double A. And I started seeing guys like, relievers on our double A team, like 2 days later, they're in the big leagues. And it's like, what? Like, this is really close. And then I remember out of spring training, the next year of 13, it was my first big league camp. And I was there the whole time and I was just playing hard, like doing my thing. And I like almost made the team and they told me I was going to double A. And I was kind of like, pissed off a little bit. I was like, I didn't want to repeat, because I had just been at that level. So I took it as like and they just told me, they're like, hey, go back and dominate and you never know what happens. And, got off to a good start, went to Tacoma and just kind of, kept the momentum going. And, but like I said, there was Mike Zanino, there was myself, there was, even Ackley before me and Seager before me. And that was just kind of the Mariners thing at the time. Like, they weren't afraid to take college dudes and push them. So, it was a ton of fun. And, I definitely felt ready, you never, it's always going to be hard, but I definitely, felt prepared and ready for that. And some things you just got to learn in the big leagues anyway.
Absolutely. I'm curious about, like the defensive versatility. I think in the past, like there was a perception in baseball, maybe like 8 to 10 years ago, where it's like the worst thing you could be is a utility player because it sounded like you didn't have a position that you played well. Obviously, you came out. I think you were the top college shortstop, was an award you won your last year at Clemson. But since you've gotten to pro ball, you played second, you played third, you played first. You've gone to the outfield. Have you seen the shift in baseball take place? Is this like a Ben Zobrist opened the floodgates for this, and now all of a sudden people realize that when you have somebody like you or Ryan Flaherty or something like that who can play so many different positions, it gives you a lot of roster flexibility?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like the industry is just so, they don't think as inflexible as before. Like they go, okay, hey, we have this bat or we have this whatever that we want to make work. And instead of maybe in the past where they're like, oh, but he's a third baseman, like we need a second baseman, it won't work. They go, no, wait a second, like it will work. Let's just move him there. Like he can handle it. So I think it's definitely like the industry's not afraid to, be flexible. And I think also it was something that when I first got moved in Seattle, I was not, I took it as like a slight. And, it was something I fought out there. I went out and like every day I still, worked my butt off. Like I still, when they moved me to the outfield, I was like taking more balls and running all over the place. And, I was just diving everywhere and it was a lot of fun. But like, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder and I kind of like, didn't, I took it the wrong way. And I think that's something that over the years I've matured. And, I think defense is one of those things where if you don't embrace what you're doing, then it's definitely going to affect your performance. So now I feel great about it. Now I do see the value in it and it is fun for me. I love playing all over the place. And I think I've seen my performance also, get better and all that just because, I'm fully bought in. I'm embracing, kind of being that guy that can move all around and, not have it affect him.
What was the hardest position to pick up? I mean, obviously shortstop is be athletic. The game's kind of always in front of you.
For sure.
What was the biggest change? Was it outfield? Was it first? What was the biggest adjustment?
I think it's a great question. I think like it's kind of, it might seem backwards to some people and I think they all go, oh, you played shortstop, we'll just throw you over at first. But I've played shortstop my whole life. Like that's something to me where people ask me, oh, what's the easiest position for you? Personally, is shortstop just because of the comfort level and the amount of reps, at short and at second. And third is even like close to shortstop, according to the angles, But the hardest one for me was definitely first. Like obviously the easy parts is, hey, yes, catch the ball. Just catch the ball and flip it to the pitcher. But like, there's a couple split decisions that like, especially how aggressively they play the first baseman off. Cause that's what they told me in Tampa. They're like, hey, like we're going to use your athleticism to our advantage. Like we're going to be able to play you farther from the bag in this spot. And there's some decisions like the ball will be hit right off your right foot, and you might have to break to the left and like leave the ball because you have the base.
Yeah.
And when the ball would go to the outfield, I would find myself like drifting to where a shortstop would go. So I call them like action balls. Like when the ball was kind of hit into the field, that definitely took some time to get used to, and to know where to go. Just because I'm used to kind of being in the middle, but they all have their little quirks and challenges. But I think keeping it as simple as possible and just getting your work in, and it'll go all right.
Did you find that, in the limited outfield stuff that you've had to do, I know Sam Fold, who is a good buddy of yours, and you spent some time in Philly together this year. Like he talked a lot about there's no better substitute than just going out during BP and shagging a ton in the outfield. Was that something that you did, or did playing outfield actually come more naturally with you? And reading the ball off the bat's a lot different than playing short, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, yeah, it is. It's just, and that's why the guys that have done it their whole life, I think about Kiermaier, like he has this innate just ability that like when the ball goes up, he can already compute in his mind probably where it's going to land. It's like golfers, when they see the ball flight so much, or even us as hitters, like we hit a ball, it's like, okay, like I kind of know where that ball is going to go based on how it fell, this and that. So yeah, I remember in Seattle, just like Andy Van Slyke, who, pretty damn good outfielder, in his own right, back in the day with the Cardinals and the Pirates, got a handful of gold gloves, and he was a machine. I mean, he would just hit balls like crazy, and he instilled a lot of confidence in me, telling me, hey, like, this actually looks pretty good. Like, let's work on these things. And he was a good that was my intro to outfield, was 2015 in Seattle. The first time in my life I'd played it. So, and then in Tampa, I begged Rocco Baldelli, to let me play outfield in Tampa one time. That lasted a game. And he felt bad. He was like, dude, like I shouldn't have done that, without any practice. But
That's a different place to play outfield too. You got to deal with the roof and
yeah. But yeah, I think it's just reps. You really, have to use all the time in BP and in early work to just kind of, be efficient with your work, because I got to play a bunch of different spots, but just be efficient and, get good quality work in.
Yeah, I mean, are you actually out there? I mean, obviously you're carrying a million different gloves in your bag, but
Mm-hmm.
are you out there working at each position every day, or do you kind of just pick one horse and ride it for the day and let it count for enough?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, kind of based on the lineup. If that day I'm playing third base, then like I'm probably just going to play third,
Mhm.
and really just kind of hone in on that in early work.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, if the legs are feeling a little froggy, and I'm hitting in the second group or something, I'll go out there and take some reads, because that is a cool thing about it. And especially playing in the National League, like, you know, I might start the game at third, but like, never know what happens in the game
Yeah.
situations, and you can move around a little bit. So I think I just try to keep like a little mental log of like, okay, hey, I haven't been out in the outfield in a couple days. Like I better run around out there. I better do some early work and just kind of get some crisp work and feel really confident in it. And then, just kind of based on the team scenario, like this year with the Phillies, I got forced into action a lot at third base. And then our left fielder, Corey Dickerson, ended up going down, and Jay Bruce ended up going down the last 10 days of the season, and it was all left field. So then it was kind of like, all right, that was my number one position to kind of to work at and get prepared for. So, yeah, I think you just got to be like water and just find your time and really try to, hit and cover all your bases,
Yeah.
and, wear it as a badge of honor, being able to do all that at a drop of a hat.
Absolutely. Do you think, as you look back on it, like, do you think part of this is possible because you did play shortstop for so long? Like, you don't see a whole lot of guys that played, outfield that become infielders, in a utility role. Usually your shortstop's the most athletic kid on the field. It's the most arm speed in many cases that isn't on the mound. And there's just a higher level of athleticism and versatility in what they have to encounter from day to day. Do you think that made it easier longer term?
Yeah, I think thinking about like all the positions, like the one position that kind of has it all, is shortstop. Like those I used to love, like growing up. I remember my dad would be hitting me ground balls, and like we'd always end with, like bloopers over my head, so like there's times where you have to go back on the ball and catch fly balls. There's times, obviously moving to your left, moving to your right. You have to charge the ball like a third baseman, and kind of on the run throw it. So I definitely think shortstop kind of gives you, all those aspects. And then, you kind of, but there's also like, obviously every time you move to a new position, there's like very specific movement to just that position. But I definitely think shortstop kind of gives you a little bit of everything for sure.
That's good stuff. Now we're gonna shift gears a little bit. You've played for 7 different organizations over the years. Obviously, it was technically 4 this year.
I'm obviously not that nice if I'm playing for that many organizations.
Come on now,
right?
Give yourself some credit. You want to see the world, right?
That's right.
So tell me something that you liked about each organization. So Mariners first. What stands out as you like something that benefited you while you were there?
Oh, wow. Well, just from like the city standpoint, like Seattle's amazing. Like that, I don't think I realized like how good I had it. Like showing up every day, going to work at Safeco Field, like beautiful stadium. Seattle in the summer is perfect. But like a lot of my first memories of the big leagues, kind of like a foundation, playing with guys like Raul Ibanez and Willie Bloomquist and Kyle Seager, playing behind Felix Hernandez and up the middle with Cano, like those are some crazy memories. And like going through 2014, my first full year in the big leagues where I was terrible, and like coming out on the other side of it and being like, okay, like, no, I belong. Like I'm a big league player. Like if I can be that bad and then finish the season strong, like then I'm going to be okay. So I think that's kind of where I like obviously learned, I guess, the basics of Major League Baseball, and all the, I remember my mom, like my first road trip, my mom was like, "Oh, who's your roommate?" And I'm like, "Mom, it's the show. Like, I don't have a roommate. I got my own room." Like little stuff like that. Just great memories from Seattle. Great memories. And, I mean, Edgar Martinez was our hitting coach one year, a Hall of Famer. Like, he was awesome. Like, I remember I would just try to hit balls like over the moon in batting practice, and he would just smile at me and be like, "Hey, Brad, can you please just try to hit like some line drives the other way, and then you can hit in the fourth deck, like, but please, like, just for me." And it was just like how he, instead of yelling at me or like, trashing me, he was just like smiling. He's like, "Hey, Brad, like, let's just do something productive here."
Nice.
So yeah, that was definitely, I guess, a little Seattle time capsule there.
And then in November of 15, I'm not sure if you even know this fun fact, you were part of the largest Cressey sports performance trade in history. So
me, Lomo.
You and Lomo, and then CJ Riefenhauser was one of our guys who was actually at the facility that day when he found out about it.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a big CSP trade. But what did Tampa treat you? What did you learn there?
Yeah, I think Tampa, the coolest thing was like, a little snippet, like when I got traded, Jerry DiPoto, I was his first trade, and he's made like $1 million with the Mariners.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he was like, "Brad," he's like, a lot of players don't get to hear this, but, they really they've been trying to get you for years, because he had just got the job with Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
It was a new GM. And so he told me, he was like, "Hey, you're going to love it in Tampa." He's like, "They really have wanted you for years. So like, go have fun." And then I got a call from Jack Zarenzik, who was my first GM with Seattle. And he told me the same thing. He was like, "Hey, I know guys don't get to, kind of know this or whatever a lot of the times, but like they really like you, and, it's going to be great for your career, this and that." And I was kind of like, whoa, that was cool. And that, I guess, is the one thing I take from Tampa is like they ran me out there every day. Like I got 600 plus at bats, played with still some of my best friends in the game. Like it was so much fun. I definitely think we underperformed as a team because we had a ton of talent, and they obviously have gone on to, they have so much talent in that organization. But, they ran me out there every day. And like, I remember Cash telling me, "Hey, like, swing the bat. Like, we don't care if the guy before you, swung at the first pitch. Like, go up there and do damage." Like, they took the training wheels off, and, because sometimes in Seattle, I was always looking over my shoulder, as kind of a younger player, like, can I swing? Can I not? And I got to Tampa, and like everybody's young. Like, I had 2.5 years in the big leagues, and that was like kind of like middle of the pack with Tampa. So, they kind of allowed me to definitely grow up. And 600 at bats a year is a beautiful thing. So I loved it. I loved it and made some great friends. And then it got
hit 30 tanks too, so it worked.
yeah. I do love some homers. But yeah, like it was part of that though, because like in April I was terrible. Like I hit 150 in April with one homer, and like I was with a new team. I wanted to show them, and then like they stuck with me, and by June I just got like white hot, made some changes, learned how to use my legs more, my body, and I just started seeing the ball like fly off my bat like I never had before. So, if they kind of, bench me or get rid of me, then I would have, been able to kind of work through some things and figure out how to drive the ball a little bit. So
And then
that was fun.
So years later, you wind up with the Brewers.
Yep.
What do you got on the Brewers?
Shorter
Stint.
It was a little shorter stint,
Yeah.
so not going to be as much. I can talk though, but yeah, I loved it. I mean, you could tell that team was going to, be in the playoffs and do special things, and they ended up, losing Game 7 to the Dodgers, and I was cheering for them like crazy just because I love those guys. And came in mid-season, they embraced me right away. Like I was batting leadoff, playing short again. Like it was a lot of fun. But like my leg was just killing me. My hip was killing me. But I loved Craig Counsell. Like playing for him was incredible. He was, he treated me the same regardless if I was batting leadoff playing short or if I wasn't playing or if I, had 3 hits the day before, if I didn't. He always was helping me. Pat Murphy was always, in my ear just talking trash like he does best. He's out of control, but I love that guy. Like guys would take bullets for him. So it was quick, and I was sad that, I wasn't able to see it, through because I've never played in the playoffs. But then again, like personally, like I needed to take care of my hip, so it ended up working out for the best.
Absolutely. We're going to come back to the hip, but you saw Dodgers, Indians, Yankees, and Phillies this year. So spring training with the Dodgers. You can go quick hitter on this because it was a little bit of a whirlwind of a year, but you got plenty of time in. So what was the synopsis of 2019?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was awesome, and I think being with 4 different organizations, I got to meet a lot of different people and, take from each, coming back from injury and just getting through a season. Like I met a lot of really good people that helped me a ton. Spring training with the Dodgers was awesome. Incredible setup they got there going there. Obviously, when you win that much, they're obviously doing something right. Like it has been the most sustainable, winning culture in the last 7-8 years. It's been pretty incredible. So I felt right at home with the Dodgers. Training staff was elite. Strength staff was elite. Yeah, great people. I'm the last guy in camp. I signed like March 1st, and they treated me, like how they treat everybody, like one of the guys. So they really got my feet under me. Dave Roberts was great to me. He was the one, he was like, hey, like, I really think, I know you've never had to play third because you've played with Evan Longoria and Kyle Seager, who play every inning of every game. But, I think like based on your body and your arm, like I think this could be a really good spot for you. And he was awesome. They let me get out there and play. I played a ton. I got my legs under me, and, it didn't work out with them. And I ended up, shifting to Cleveland, but like I left that organization, like the guys in Philly were probably tired of me talking about the Dodgers. I'm like, it was just first class. So, loved that. Then I went to Cleveland for like 20 days, getting to play for, Hall of Famer Tito, Brad Mills, who has a great name, one of the best names in baseball. Those guys, it was awesome. Every game was 30 degrees, so you love just getting some 30-degree weather.
Perfect for an Orlando guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, so it was fun, and I loved kind of, getting to meet some new guys and picking Trevor Browersbane, who I played together with him in college on Team USA one year. But like his process at the field is crazy, and one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Just how disciplined he is, and like he's a scientist, basically. So I loved Cleveland. It was quick. And I got booed when I went back. That was cool.
Oh, come on.
I did. Yeah, I hit some tanks off them though, so it was sweet. Yeah, Yankees was awesome. Obviously, I was in Scranton for about 5 or 6 weeks. Got a lot of good work in hitting wise with Phil Plantier. and Pat Rossler, aka Six. So met, those guys. Obviously, AAA was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the big leagues and felt like that's where I should have been. But man, we made the most out of it. We had a ton of homers. Our team was loaded. We got in a brawl with Syracuse. That was fun. But just like a great group of guys,
Yeah.
and to see, Mike Ford and Talkman, the sock man, go up to New York and kill it, and Ryan McBroom get traded and make his debut for Kansas City, and obviously Lomo ended up with me. It was awesome. Like great guys, like took it back to like summer ball where it's like we're just playing. Like who cares about all the stuff we can't control? Like we just went out there and played hard and had fun while we were doing it. And then obviously got to spend the last like 3.5 months with Philadelphia, which was incredible. Fight my way, getting back to the big leagues.
And put up great numbers too. It was a really good
Yeah,
66 games, 941 OPS. There was a lot of good things happening.
yeah, it was fun, and I really just I felt like finally like a lot of the things I've learned throughout that year and just going through some stuff the last couple years, like you just want to be able to put together the stuff you've learned, and I felt like with Philly from like a baseball performance standpoint, like I did that. I was starting as, coming off the bench, a bat off the bench, and that was fun. That was something I embraced. Hey, I'm ready to do this. And then I know baseball, it's crazy. Like guys got hurt, things change, and I got, thrust into a bigger role. And obviously that's what every player wants. And that was something like talking with Sean Rodriguez a lot, a guy who's been doing it for over 10 years, and he's a competitor, and, in his career, he hasn't had many opportunities to get 600 at bats a year. And I always ask him, I'm like, you know, is the right attitude to just embrace the smaller role? And he was like, no. He was like, I always in my head know and think that I should be playing every single inning. And, I always have that competitive fire. I just, am a professional and I do whatever I have to do to help the team. And then, when I got thrust into that role, I felt like because I was always, I was still staying sharp. I still thought I should be out there and I wanted to prove something. I finished really strong at the end of the year and ended up, putting up some of the best numbers of my career by far as the, as far as all that stats and whatever and whatnot. So it was a great experience. I love those guys in Philly. Great dudes. Like, I felt like even when I wasn't playing well, I felt like, I was contributing to the team, just kind of being there for my guys. And, we had a great crew. So I loved it. I look back, it's going to be one of my favorite years, I think.
It's funny. It's like I think there are so many people that would be resentful of being in 4 different organizations in the same year. And I think when we see guys like that who actually wind up thriving, like I think about Oliver Drake. Oliver got
Yep.
played for 5 different teams in the big leagues last year, and Oliver's just that guy who's always going to be upbeat and positive. It's kind of like be where your feet
Yeah,
are at. Like take
for
it day
sure.
by day, stay positive, be a good teammate, and
For sure.
these things have a way of working out. But
For sure.
you also what thing I think is actually interesting is you talked about how things really started to click in Philadelphia late in the year, and I don't think it's a coincidence that that's kind of the 1 year mark on your hip surgery. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience with that, because I look back and we got to know each other a little bit as you were kind of coming off of your microfracture, and you had stopped being non-weight bearing, and we took the baton a little bit
Hmm.
there. But talk a little about kind of how the symptoms came about over the years, the timeline, because I think there are a lot of people who have cranky hips and may benefit from hearing this if they are going down the surgical route.
Yeah, 100%. And I think throughout the process, um, the best thing that's helped me is like talking to teammates and even guys I didn't know in the game, but guys that had surgery, like this, and just kind of picking their brain, if they had it a couple years before me. So that's always been a huge help. And I actually was just on the phone last week with Chad Bettis, a guy who's just going through that surgery again. So just trying to pay it forward. But, so I think I've always been, super like hyper, like play every day, like just go all day long until, I guess in the off season before I got to Tampa, just, I think just kind of tweaked like I guess groin adductor, just at lower abs, like just kind of tweaked it and ended up being fine by spring training and played through the year. And then in 17 was kind of the first time it reared its head. So just running down, beating out a ground ball infield single off Andrew Miller. So you have to get down the line.
Yep.
And yeah, just pulled kind of that whole my left side. And me, I'd never been on the DL before. I'm stubborn. And, I was coming off of, hitting 30 home runs, and I'm starting to, have a bigger, role on the team. So like, yeah, I felt like I needed to get back out there for the boys and, for myself. So, came back from that in like literally in the minimum 10 days and, played a game. We were up in Seattle, actually played a game, and I was terrible. And at the end of it, like we're flying back on the plane, and my hip joint on my right side, on the other side, felt like I had like a shotgun going off in it. I mean, it was terrible. And so we get back into Tampa the next day, and same thing in the morning when I woke up. So I told him, like, hey, like this is something I've never felt before. It's like in there. And, yeah, so ended up just kind of grinding through that year in 17, getting a cortisone shot, missing 6 weeks. And then when I came back, like my legs just felt like jelly, but I was playing. Actually played pretty good defense, but I had no strength, couldn't drive the ball. And at the end of the season, we were like, hey, we probably need to go get this checked out, like, just so it doesn't linger. So I went up to Philadelphia, Dr. Myers, and he did an MRI and was basically like, yeah, like you're torn up. Like basically two out of the three of my adductors on both sides were like fraying and torn off the attachments, like where it attaches. And same with my rectus abdominis on the one side. So he basically went in and he was like, oh, and you have hip labrum damage.
Yeah. So basically,
And
you were like a tent that was missing a few stakes. That's the way I describe
sure.
it. There was
Yep.
no stability in multiple directions.
Exactly. So I learned the hard way how important those surrounding muscles are to protect that joint. So basically, I dealt with like 2 years of, two separate surgeries and 2 years of just kind of, not having my legs where they need to be. And it was all from the same thing. So first I took care of all the musculature and that core muscle surgery, they call it. And yeah, everything felt intact and ready to go for spring. Obviously, getting your kind of insides torn up, it wasn't really firing and where it needed to be. So the hip thing kind of reared its head again. But like I said, I was stubborn or whatever, and I went out and it was spring training. So I went out to, kind of get through the year. And actually in 18, was able to put up some good numbers with Tampa, and they traded me to Milwaukee and got off to a good start there. But then it just, by end of July, it just gave out on me. I just felt like I had nothing under me. So when Milwaukee released me or DFA'd me and I elected free agency, I was like, hey, like I told my agent, I'm like, I need to get this fixed. Like, even if I went and played for a team, I wouldn't be the guy that they want. I'm not going to be a guy that can help them. Like, but next year in 2019 or whatever, I need to be ready to help somebody. So I went to Dr. Bird in Nashville, and he checked out my hip, and he was like, oh yeah. He's like, there's definitely some damage in there. We're going to get to the bottom of it and fix it. And could not have been any happier. I don't know how I made that decision. Like, honestly, it was something on my mind from the beginning of that year, but I look back on it and I'm just so happy that I got it done when I got it done and put it behind me, and, learned a lot along the way. So
yeah, those are really common, concurrent pathologies, right? So you see the sports hernia repair, which is in many cases, a very quick return to action. You'll see guys that are back competitively in as little as 2 months in many cases.
Yeah.
And then when you actually have the femoral acetabular impingement, where they'll shave down the bony blocks, they'll obviously clean up the labrum and repair it. And you also had a microfracture, so you had a cartilage defect as part of that. So talk a little bit about your specific timeline. So after you had your surgery, what were you looking at?
Yeah. So I basically the doctor told me when we go in and assess the amount of damage, it'll be one of three things. Either we just clean out all the crap and your labrum, is salvageable and it's fine and we don't have to put anchors in. And he goes, that happens about, 5-10% of the time. That's low likelihood. And then what happens the majority of the time is we go in, we clean out the crap, and we anchor down the labrum. And then, so that happens the majority of the time. And then another small chance is we do all that stuff, plus we see cartilage damage that, we're going to do the microfracture. And if that happens, then it's going to be 8 weeks non-weight bearing compared to like 4 for the other stuff. So, he got in there and he gave me the works, and the way he kind of described it was, hey, it's an extra 4 weeks non-weight bearing, but this is going to help you, for the rest of your life. So, so we ended up doing all 3, and exactly. So 8 weeks I was on crutches. And then, they kind of say, 5 to 7 months ish, just depending on the person, I guess, as far as like return to competitive action. And I had Nick Ahmed, one of my favorite shortstops, for the Diamondbacks. He actually had the surgery 2 years prior on the same exact day. Wow. So I was like annoying the crap out of him, and I don't know him at all, but I was like, hey, I looked it up because I was like, I know Nick Ahmed had this, and it was on the same day. And I go, okay, I got to reach out to this dude. And, he gave me like a very vague timeline of like, okay, I started, the running progression middle of December, and I started throwing in December, and then I started hitting a little too early in the middle of December. So I would just wait till January, little stuff like that. So, that's basically what I did, by New Year's, I was cleared to start swinging. I had already been throwing a little bit. I had completed my running progression. Obviously not, I wouldn't say I wasn't ready to jump into a spring training game. I really wasn't ready until I got to camp with the Dodgers in March. Middle of March, I was like playing in these games and felt comfortable enough to hit and, run out the box and all that stuff. But, it's just, the stamina, the different stuff like that. And, even, starting the year in Cleveland, every game in 30 degrees, dealing with that. It's pretty much just constant, like soft tissue work, making sure all the cranky muscles around that hip were just, kind of letting go and in shape. So,
I'm trying to think, didn't you, and refresh me if my memory is incorrect, but, didn't you, come out of it a little bit lighter? Didn't you intentionally lower your weight just a little bit? That was a big part of it. Where's your playing weight before and where is it now?
Yeah, so I kind of got back to where I was in Seattle, and it felt like a much easier weight for me to carry. But as I mentioned earlier, like I always was one of the weakest guys on the field, and I always felt I needed to gain strength. Well, once I got traded to Tampa, I felt like I was carrying too much, and it's nothing people would notice. I was just thicker. Like for the first time in my life, I actually had, I was, fairly, I guess, strong, like in the weight room or whatever. But for me, just learning through trial and error, I was up to like 215, 217, and I would show up to spring and immediately drop down to 205. And it was like, okay, so this is probably like where I need to be. It's a more natural weight for me to carry. So from in 18, just from not being able to do anything, like I was in pure survival mode, just, hey, I need to play the game. I was already kind of going in a little lighter. But the second, I had surgery and I really tried to clean up my eating just to really help with the inflammation and do anything to speed up the process. I probably rehabbed at like 190. And then, this year was able to build it back, in a much better sense, back closer to 200. So, I think just trial and error with all that. I definitely saw like going through it with Logan Morrison. He's just a bigger guy than I am. He knows I can obviously handle him in any sort of physical brawl because we've done it multiple times. He's just, I think it might just be a mental thing. But like he was having just a little bit more, I guess, feelings in the hip as we went through the process just because he had, 50 pounds on me. So I definitely think going forward, I look at the players that are playing into their mid and late 30s, and it's guys that are lean and that can move and that can, remain, with a nice weight on their joints and kind of taking it, taking some of the pressure off it. So I feel great right now. I'm like 196. And I think that, from 196 to 200 for me is going to be a spot where I can move and my joints will, definitely reap the benefits.
And you mentioned talking to Cishek was one of the things he said was it's going to be a year. Right about a year is when it's going to feel. Was that pretty consistent with your experience? Like, is that the landmark that you found was the case?
For sure. And another guy, Shishak, who, helped a ton, but he's a big dude. He's 6'5", and, he's way bigger than me. So, he said, hey, like, if you get this done, like, it was like a full year. Like, yeah, I was pitching, but like, I think he was out in Seattle. And he was like, I wasn't, as good. The guy's got like a career, 2.5 ERA. But yeah, 100%. So once I got to August with the Phillies and it kind of coincided with me getting to play more, I was like, okay, this is starting to feel like, like I'm past the rehab stage and like I'm into the stage where like, I can build off this for the rest of my career.
That's great. I mean, and there's something to be said about learning from the process. So you obviously talked about being lighter as you got older, but what are the recommendations that you offer to any athlete that's going through a hip repair like you did?
Yeah, I think, I think the biggest thing would be like, just try to be like a student of your body, I guess. Like, unfortunately, like through these surgeries and this process, like I found like I'm really interested in the body and, because I love baseball, like I love playing baseball. And for me, to play baseball, I have to take care of my body. So, I think, just try to be in tune with it. Try to understand what's something that, hey, this is, really serious. I need to pump the brakes and ask and get it checked out. Or, hey, let me try to, do some soft tissue, by myself or do some daily mob work and see kind of what works. I would just say like, try to be a master, of your body and know it better than anybody else.
I think the feedback of talking to other guys is really important as well. Like getting out there.
Sure.
And no, that Matt is a Yukon guy. You can always trust a Yukon guy. That's
right. Yeah.
That's a person. Although, did you guys face each other in 2011 in the postseason?
Yeah, that's my last college game. So first of all, that team being a 3 seed at our regional.
Yeah.
Come on. It's Springer and Ahmed.
Scott Oberg.
And Matt Barnes and Mazzilli, and Andrioli. They were loaded.
6 big leaguers, you're right. But, so anyway. I didn't mean to rub that in. That's my bad. All right, so you survived the long questions. Now we got the lightning round. I know you've listened to some of these podcasts, so
that's right.
You're semi-prepared for it. So who do you like to watch? Both on the hitting side and then also, guys who are playing the field. Who are you a fan of?
Okay, hitting-wise, I'm going to go with Christian Yelich.
Nice.
In my short time in Milwaukee, I was like, this dude is like, it's simple. And he just like could not keep the ball in the yard, could not keep it. And on defense, I have to go with Ahmed. I love Ahmed. Just watching him throw, like it's so, cause he's huge too. He's like 6'4", but like just watching him. And, also shout out Kevin Kiermaier too. I love watching him play center. So
yeah, he's pretty good.
Boom. Pretty good.
All right, so favorite teammate of all time. You can pick a couple if you want to.
Okay, couple. I mean, definitely the guy who like I still go to like once a year when I'm like, just down in the like I just need some wisdom, some guidance, and a guy who like I've literally learned everything like I base off stuff he said is Raul Ibanez. Like that dude is
great. He's
the best. The best. And also Chris Young, tall Chris Young.
Yep.
Who was with me in Seattle. Same thing. Like these guys are just like, I don't know. They've seen and forgot about more baseball than I'll ever know. So those two, like I always, kind of go to for wisdom. And even a guy like in Tampa, like Evan Longoria. I mean, that's, as far as like a superstar comes to post every day, like incredible teammate, like, but there's a million. I mean, I get along with a lot of people and I don't know.
I like it. All right. So recommendations for a young Brad Miller. Let's say high school Brad Miller and then minor league Brad Miller.
Oh, wow. High school Brad Miller. Catch the ball, probably. Catch the ball. Yeah, there's so many things like I've learned or whatever, and I'm like, man, like if I knew that in high school, if I knew that in college, but then again, like that's natural, like the development process. But yeah, and then in college,
Yeah, what do you got?
Brad definitely catch the ball, but college Brad, I would just say, I don't know, it's okay to fail, I guess. Like, I don't know, I would freak out like in college. Obviously, you feel like every game is like the biggest thing in the world. And, I ended up like my favorite year that I've played in the big leagues is 2014, like when I was the worst player in the league, and I came out on the other side. So it was like, I don't know, you learn from it.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah.
And then what about minor leagues? Granted, you were a minor leaguer for about, I don't know, year and a half at most.
Right.
And you get to relive it a little bit this year, but
yeah,
tough one. But
just like I remembered.
Yep. What was your biggest lesson from the minor leagues? What would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I would say just like, and it applies to anything, but like just keep your head down and like, even this year in AAA, I got there and was like, 5.5 years in the big leagues, and like my first games, I was like 1 for 20, and I was like freaking out, and I'm like, oh my god, and it's just like, okay, take a deep breath, like keep your head down and just play hard, and then like next thing I look up and it's like, my numbers, looked how they looked, and it was great, and I got called up, so it's like just keep your head down, dude, and stop being an idiot.
This is awesome. Well, normally at this point in the interview, as we sign off, we tell people where they can find you on social media, but you are absolutely nowhere on social media, and I actually respect that a ton. That's the Blake Trinan strategy as well. So I'm going to tell people they can find you at a big league stadium near them at some point in the upcoming season. That's the best place to see Brad. So,
exactly. That's where I'll be. So I'm excited.
I like it, man. Thanks so much for coming on. It was always good to catch up, and I really enjoyed your insights tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, big fan. So thank you for having me.
You got it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review to read on iTunes. We welcome your suggestions for future guests and questions. Just email elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you next episode.